Hi there, this is Eric Norlander with IK Multimedia, and we've made an analog synthesizer. This is the Uno Synth. It's a two oscillator real analog synthesizer that uses a 2-pole state variable filter with 2 envelopes, sequencer and arpeggiator. You can hear a little bit of it here. So the synth starts with 2 analog oscillators, as I mentioned. They are variable shape oscillators, so you can continuously vary the shape from triangle to saw, from saw to square, there we go, and then of course pulse width modulation. You can modulate the shape and the pulse width modulation with the LFO or with the envelope. The 2 oscillators are independent, so you can modulate between triangle and saw on one and do pulse width modulation on the other, or just have a fixed pulse wave on one and modulate between oscillator shape on the other if you prefer. There's also a white noise generator. That gets mixed together, and then it goes into our 2-pole state variable resonant multimode filter. The filter, of course, has 3 modes: low pass, high pass, and band pass, and resonance that goes from pretty tame to rather extreme. Then we have a custom overdrive in the Uno Synth, and this really gives the synth quite a bit of character. When the overdrive is off or it's at low saturation settings, you can get kind of a warm, classic 70s sound out of the synth. But then when you increase the overdrive, the distortion gets pretty intense, and especially when you combine it like with the bandpass filter or the high pass filter at high resonances, we get very much into like extreme modern sounds, into kind of EDM territory, and things you'd expect out of a Eurorack system. Of course, we have envelope amount to set the amount that the filter modulates, the envelope modulates the filter rather. We have 2 envelopes, a filter envelope and an amplitude envelope. They're actually 4-stage envelopes, ADSR, but on the front panel of the synth, we give you just 2 controls per envelope to keep it simple. We give you the 2 controls for each that you use the most. So for the filter, it's filter attack and filter decay. For amplitude, it's amp attack and amp release. And then if you want to control all 4 stages of the ADSR, you can do that with MIDI CC or with the included editor that for the computer. We have an LFO with 7 different wave shapes: sine wave, triangle wave, saw down, saw up, square, random, and sample and hold, of course. Variable rate. We can also, of course, sync it to the tempo. So the first half of the knob gives you just the internal values, and then once we get halfway up, then we start getting note values. So whole note, half note, quarter dotted quarter note, dotted eighth note, and so forth. I'm doing this upside down, as you see. So of course the LFO, we can modulate pitch, filter, and amplitude. There are 5 performance buttons on the synth, and these are designed to give you instant musical articulations. So there's dive and scoop. This is something we were inspired by the 70s Japanese synths like the Yamaha CS80, the Roland SH5 and SH2. Roland called it auto bend. The CS80 also had the scoop parameter. So dive dives down to the note, scoop scoops up to the note. Vibrato is pitch modulation based on the rate of the LFO. So you press that button and you'll have instant pitch modulation or vibrato. Wah is filter modulation, and tremolo, of course, is amplitude modulation. So when the sequence is playing or the arpeggiator is playing, or if you're just playing it live, you can add these instant articulations just by touching the button. And again, I say touching as opposed to pressing because it's actually capacitance sensing. So it's not membrane switches or anything like that. So you don't actually have to press the buttons. You just touch it, and it uses the capacitance of your fingers to sense the note or the button. There's a 16-step sequencer in the instrument. There are 100 presets, and each preset has a sequence attached to it. The sequence is 16 steps, as I mentioned, and the extra cool thing about it is that you can store 20 different synth parameter values per step. So you can actually completely change the sound of the preset from step to step. And Enrico here has actually done a pretty cool preset where he's created a drum pattern where he goes from a kick drum sound to a snare drum sound to a tom sound. You want to demo that? That's worth hearing. So in these first steps, he has the kick drum, and then he's brings in the white noise generator in a different envelope shape. Then he changes the pitch for the tom and the percussion, and then repeats it again. And of course, you can modulate all of this in real time. It is a step sequencer, so you can program it step by step, like an old TB-303, or you can record in real time. So you just press record and play, and then just play the notes in, and it will fit them into the 16-step sequence. This is true for both notes and parameters again. So being able to modulate these 20 parameters per step actually gives this instrument a lot of dimension and lets you do a lot more than you would think of from just a simple 2-oscillator synthesizer. There's also an arpeggiator. Excellent. So the arpeggiator has 10 different modes. Oh wait, there's Stranger Things going on. Okay, we have to let that go. Okay, so you know the usual up and down, up down, repeating the top and bottom notes, down up, repeating the top and bottom notes, as played. So if you play a 3-note chord, you play the third, then you play the root, then you play the fifth. It will actually play them in that order. There's a random mode where it will just pick the notes that you're holding down and play them in a random order. Then there's no mode where you can do up, down, and it will play 2 notes for each one. There we go. So we're going up, but we're playing 2 notes for each note in the scale, and then it'll do the same thing for down. Right. Okay. We have a scale keyboard. So in the normal mode, we just have a regular Western chromatic scale that you play on the keyboard here. But then we've taken the idea from some of our iOS instruments to add musical scales, so we can actually quantize the keyboard to only play notes within a certain scale. So there's major, minor, and then we have, is it 10 different? I keep forgetting how many. 12. Then there's 12 different alternate scales, so the usual Dorian, Lydian, Mixolydian, Phrygian, klezmer, all kinds of cool scales. So you can actually get a lot of music out of this instrument without having any real musical training at all. And that's very much the spirit of the Uno. We wanted it to be the analog synth for everyone. It's €199, excluding tax. It will be available in July. It's super portable, so really, really lightweight. It can run on 4 AA batteries or via 5-volt USB power. USB also will do MIDI, of course, so you can integrate it with your DAW on your computer or on your iOS device easily. There's also traditional MIDI connections as well. We give you the included MIDI cables. It has a audio in, so you can daisy chain drum machines or a second Uno synth or vintage mini Moog if you like. Let's see, what else? There's a delay effect. We can adjust the time and the mix of the delay, of course, which is pretty cool. Glide. We have some global functions. You can turn the metronome on and off for real-time recording in the sequencer. We can turn on sync if we want to sync to external MIDI clock. So that will not only sync the arpeggiator and the sequencer, but also the LFO. So if you want to have the LFO running in sync with other devices, you can do that as well. Master tune, of course. So that's it. That's the Uno synth.